There was a statement made here about Lincoln Riley that I thought was a decent statement that somebody made concerning that there has not been a head coach who has won a national championship. Here it is from Robert. A head coach who calls his own plays has not won a national championship since 1998. I don't know if he's just stating that in the BCS era or he's specifically going to Philip Fulmer in 1998. I don't know that Philip Fulmer was calling his own plays anyway,
No, he
because
had
it
David
doesn't work in today's
Cutcliffe.
game. Yes, he had David
Yeah,
Cutcliffe,
David
exactly, who was
Cutcliffe,
the
and also
mastermind.
Randy Sanders too. If David Cutcliffe wasn't
Yeah, so it
always
wasn't.
calling the
Yeah,
plays.
I said that kind of facetiously about. Anyway, anyone want to talk about that? So not directed
Yeah,
necessarily at us, but
so that seems like, well, hey, Robert, here's a technicality for you. Offensive plays? What about defensive plays? Pete Carroll called defensive plays for USC. So I kind of got you on a technicality there, Robert, that, if offensive play callers, maybe, but there have been some defensive play callers who have won the national championship this century. So like that's one little nuance. But in terms of offense, where we normally think of play calling, Steve Spurrier walked away from Florida early in the century. If he sticks at Florida, he probably wins another. Like he was really close in 2001. And of course, September 11 bumped that Tennessee game back to December 1st. And Tennessee was much better in 2001 at the end of the season. Tennessee was not ready to beat Florida if they had played in early September in 2001. So like the unique and awful events of that year played a part in that. Florida easily could have been in the national championship game against the Miami Hurricanes. And you have other, bizarre plot twists of history. So I don't think like there's some grand, exposition or, revelation of how guys who call their own plays, don't succeed. I mean, with Lincoln Riley in particular, if Lincoln Riley, the biggest mistake he ever made in terms of an in-game coaching decision at the University of Oklahoma was not going for it on 4th down and half a yard at the Georgia 15.5-yard line in overtime in the 2018 Rose Bowl. If Lincoln Riley goes for it and he gets the touchdown, the Oklahoma very possibly wins that game. But he got scared, wasn't able to trust what was his best offensive line at OU to get half a yard in that game against Kirby Smart's Georgia defense. That is by far the worst individual play selection and tactical choice that Lincoln Riley made at Oklahoma. If that one decision is different, Oklahoma might have won that national title, given how that was not Alabama's best year. Oklahoma, with that loaded offense going up against Alabama in the national title game in Atlanta, it would have set up really well for Oklahoma had the Sooners been able to get that half yard in overtime against Georgia in an epic Rose Bowl.
The other mistake I think some college football fans make in reviewing awards and championship seasons is that they clump what happened in the postseason into evaluation for a Heisman Trophy after the fact. And that gets looked upon. That's not when the decision was made.
And that's an understandable point. And it's a lot like the NBA MVP, with Nikola Jokic, losing in the first round of the NBA playoffs, and people saying, "Well, he didn't really measure up." But we have to know that regular season ball and playoff ball are two very different things. Now, if you were to say that the postseason should be included, and that we should have a Heisman presentation on the second weekend of January, sure. But if in terms of saying, well, he really didn't deserve the Heisman, well, if the ground rules are the regular season, and so you debate the ground rules, right? You debate where you set the rules, where you set the parameters. But given the rules in place, you can't say he didn't deserve it, because that was the framework in which the award is handed out. So just like that's the distinction. I'm not saying you shouldn't push back. I'm not saying you shouldn't complain or that you don't have a legitimate gripe. It's just that the place to air the gripe is, let's reform the structure. It goes back to the College Football Hall of Fame, right? You reform the structure instead of criticizing the actual athlete or athletes who might have benefited from a decision which harmed somebody else.